So once upon a time, there's this demon named Mosuke, and of course, you guys can see here, he wasn't really happy with being a demon at all. He was actually a huge pacifist. He didn't like fighting, so he was living a very low-key life. You can see here, this demon had the ability to look human, so he did. Obviously, he was just trying to blend in and live a very frugal life, a very wholesome life, low-key, without violence, without needing to eat humans. So he wasn't a very common demon that you would see all the time. In all honesty, modern day demons really are just humans, and then just keep that in mind, guys. How this demon right here was probably more human than most humans. Like I said, he didn't like fighting. He was a pacifist. He kept to himself, as you guys can see here. He lived in a very quiet home, maybe in a in a poor section of the city. So guys, you guys can see here is pretty straightforward. He's a baldy, but get this, guys, some things about him is that he's actually a pretty legendary demon. Even though he's on the weaker tier of things, he had the power of invisibility. And so despite all this, and despite knowing that he's this legendary demon, he still chose to just live modestly and just get rid of all that demon stuff that other demons do, killing, pillaging, just being overall evil and demonic. And so as we keep going here, his story opens up a little bit more, and he actually finds this gal, and this gal is named Hatsu. So the demon's name is most how do you say that? Masuk. I really don't know how to say that. And there's Hatsu. So he meets this girl Hatsu. But the thing about that I'm really impressed by this story is that Hatsu herself, she fell in love with him while he was still in his human form. And what's really surprising within this storyline is that of course he didn't really tell her straight away. Of course they just meet, they greet. But then eventually they grow closer and closer. As you can see here, he's helping her carry this water right here that could be a little bit heavier for women. And of course here you can see here he's still in his human form, and they get to know each other, guys. It's really wholesome. You can see here they go for a walk in the cherry blossoms. Man, this is like a legit Japanese story right here of love and how they found each other and how happy they are together. So this was a very amazing story right from start, but things get a little bit more tragic towards the end. But anyways, the great thing I love about Hatsu, this girl name is Hatsu, right? The thing I really love about her is, despite him not telling her up front that he's a demon, because obviously if I met a gal that was like, I'm a demon, I'd be like, hell no. I'd be like, hell no. Or if you're a gal and you meet a demon, you'd probably not want to associate with her. You'd probably be terrified. You'd probably feel betrayed. It's like it's like modern day, I'm not trying to be political here, but the trans, it's like if you find out they're trans, you feel a little off put if you really didn't know. But obviously nowadays they do tell you straight up, like, I'm this type, I'm trans, whatever. And so as you can see here, he finally tells her, I'm a demon. She's like, oh, you're a demon in disguise. And that doesn't bother her one bit. This gal is a legit saint. She's literally goddamn Mother Teresa, but on steroids. I really love her character. I really love her attitude. As you can see here, he's really, really scared about, saying this to her. He was really scared that he might just scare her off, because he was genuinely in love with her. And obviously, I don't think he ever did show, his demon form to her, because she already accepted him in his human form. So he's like probably thinking, yeah, she doesn't really need to see how ugly I truly am. But anyways, I really do think she would even be put off put about it, because she really just accepted him, for being a demon right there and then. So, and then later on, she says, my heart still feels the same as always, no matter if you're a demon or a human. And she says, I love you. And so, this is very wholesome, guys. There's so much good lore and story here. But then things turn dark. Things turn dark. Of course, he's a demon. A lot of people wish, demons didn't exist. Demons didn't get exercised. But like I said, guys, this demon was more human than humans. Because later on, we find out through this tragedy right here. So, she eventually gets kidnapped and, raped. So she gets kidnapped and raped by these two guys right here. I don't know who these guys are, but they're just random, rapists. They like raping people, which is sad to see. Like I said, guys, see, as you guys can see here, straight up, these two guys are more demonic than the actual demon himself. So, they end up raping this gal, and it's just so sad to see, and then they rape her and they throw her into this river. And right here, and of course, in this anime, we find out that, demons just don't spawn just out of nowhere. Demons are spawned through a very strong connection, a very strong emotion that eventually turns them into demons. So what happens, guys, is just so sad because she eventually turns into a demon herself. And they were combating this demon, thinking that the demon that she turned into, and Mosuke really thought that the demon that he was hunting was a demon that killed his wife, but in fact was actually the two males, because like I said, he didn't know that the two males were the actual perpetrators of this rape and murder of his wife. But in actuality, her wife, the demon he was hunting, was actually his wife, just pretty much in demon form. And it's just sad too, because she started eating women because she wanted to turn back into a human. But think about it, guys. In this demon form, as you guys can see here, by the glimpse of the eye, in this demon form, I'm sure, her demon husband would have accepted it. You know what I'm saying? It's like she was just so self-conscious about her demon form, that she wanted to eat. She was eating all these women and committing all these crimes just so she can look more human. She thought that if she ate, women in her demon form, that she could probably transform back or at least look like a human. And so, of course, things don't pan out. She eventually gets killed by the main protagonist in this anime called, his name is Jinta. So Jinta right here, as you can see here, she already, killed her in her demon form, and he just sees all the memories come together, because not only did he absorb Mosuke because he died just trying to fight off her as a demon form, but so he took his power and then took her powers within her demon form. And then, guys, it's just so crazy how he saw both memories just hit his brain, hit his memories, and then everything came full circle once he realized that this entire story was just one devastating tragedy, a love that could never be repaired, guys. This will never, probably in centuries or ever, happen again. A demon actually finding a gal that would actually accept him. So that's why this was so sad, guys, because the demon himself was more human than humans. And the gal, despite being the most saint ever, despite being the most lovable person ever, accepting him as a demon, after she turned into a demon, just completely lost, all ability of humanity and became the worst demon out there ever, just devouring all these women and killing all the men. So it's just such a duality of tragedy here. And then, of course, he killed, her, and then saw within her memories, as he absorbs their memories, he saw her memories of what actually conspired, how this all started by her getting raped. And so he saw the two men that raped her. And then later on, guys, this is where it gets, he does get revenge for them, but it's just so far gone, because revenge really doesn't do anything after this tragedy. But the thing that we can take away from this, guys, you guys can see here, these are the two guys. They're saying, oh, come on, it's one more exciting to ravage those prim and proper types. So they're talking about, going back out and raping more women. But they were like, oh, we rather just rape married women. Like, Hatsu, she was married to the demon. Mosuke, you know, and so they're reflecting back on that memory, which was just savage. See, the last bitch couldn't stop struggling and yelling her man's name until the very end. Bro, this was just crazy how they're just talking about this. But of course, back in those days, you know, there wasn't really any cameras, there wasn't even any forensics, you know, no one can really stop them. So yeah, these guys are the real demons that created this devastation. She's like, oh yeah, he was screaming Mosuke, Mosuke. And so as you guys can see here, these guys were the actual demons that destroyed this entire relationship, that destroyed this entire love story, that destroyed this entire wholesome, you know, how they found each other. You know, they totally just created more demons out of this. Of course, see, you can see here, you know, you guys can see here, Jinta, you know, obviously found them, you know, through their memories, and found them and exacted revenge, guys. Yeah, that's correct. You heard that correct. They did get revenge, which is fantastic. You know, W for him taking revenge on behalf of this lovely couple. This couple that is pretty much rare and insanely, you know, rare and just sad. So yeah, guys, you know, I did this all on the top of my head, so excuse me, you know, if there's some gaps here that I missed. But yeah, I appreciate you guys hearing me out and how you guys can find out about this tragic story. I just really wanted to make this all make a little bit more sense. If I made it more confusing, I'll take the L, guys. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, I appreciate it. This anime is called Sword of the Demon Hunter Kijin Gentoushou. This anime just does so well so far with these side stories that they're really wholesome. But that is all, guys. Peace.